Little boxes on the hillside, little boxes made of ticky-tacky, little boxes on the hillside, little boxes all the same. There's the green.
Everybody cares about their community. To me, that's what transition is about.
It's real community investment, but it's locally owned. It's local people coming down and doing it.
Our vision is that we have communities that are thriving, where people feel included, actually living a culture that supports people into a state of well-being.
I feel proud of where I live at. And that's changed.
It's been a very difficult process for us. Nobody should go into this with any kind of illusions about the amount of effort, the amount of commitment, and the amount of time that it takes.
We wanted people to use the shop. What better way to get them to use the shop than to give them ownership of the shop?
We are the first community-owned solar power station in Britain. That makes us feel pretty proud.
It's what society needs, what we all need, is to live in a safe world. And I think it's a start for it.
I wanted to go through and do a little exercise where we could talk about what is important to us, and then we would use a little bit of the consensus work that we just worked on in that little game to actually decide. And maybe we'll do that next time. So what I want you to think about for the next time we have one of these, I'll come back and I'll do the very similar thing, but this time talking about transition specifically. I want you to think about what are the most important things for you in your community. Remember, we talked about that a while back. What did you say it was?
Shuttle buses.
Shuttle buses to our house, or more buses in our area. So, and I think it would take some time to think about. We just don't have the time right now, but I want all of you to think about what are, like, say, the top 3 most important things for you in your community. What would you want to change? What would you want to see different? Okay? That's the end of my speech. And now, question and answer time. Any questions?
Why is consensus important?
Why is consensus important?
No, just say the answer from your own heart. You don't have to find it in a...
Consensus is important because if not everyone agrees to work on something in a group, then it's harder to get that thing done. That's not exactly what I wanted to say. What we have right now is democracy. Democracy is not exactly consensus. You can have everyone vote, and as long as there are just more than half of the people agree to do something, then everyone has to go along with those rules or become part of that structure. 51% of the people vote for a law or a president, and everyone has to sort of follow along. Consensus is different. Consensus is everyone has to agree. If even one person does not agree, then that specific issue has to be changed.
Like a jury.
I guess, like a jury, right? You cannot convict unless everyone agrees, right? It's kind of like that. But there could be like 10 different things. I mean, let's say there are 10 people. Each person says one thing that they want to work on, but we can't work on all 10 of them at the same time. Maybe we can only work on 1 or 2. Or maybe if you have 10 people, you can split up into groups of 2, so you can work on 5 things at the same time, but not as well as you'd be able to work on 1 or 2 things, right? So you actually have to go through, and what we would do is we would write, as a facilitator, I would write down each of the 10 things that we want, or each of the 1 thing that each person wants, and then each person would talk about why they think that is important, right? Like we did in that little game. We'd say, I think this is the most important thing because, and we each go around and we do that. And then we take a vote and say, do we all want shuttle buses? If everyone votes yes, then that particular thing is moved forward. If only one person says no, then it has to go back. There's a little, this is important, I wanted to show you this. Maybe you can't see it very well. But the facilitator checks for understanding, make sure everyone understands each point. Have some discussion on each proposal. Each item that a person wants to have is called a proposal. Restate the proposal and then you can discuss it. Maybe just some light discussion, and there's time for the person to change it. If you think that you won't reach consensus, you can change it a little bit. Maybe not buses directly to my home, but buses 5 blocks from my home. Then you you go through it again, and you really quickly talk about what is it that you want. If somebody blocks it, if one person does not vote for it, you have to go all the way back to number 2, and you have to rework your proposal. If everyone says yes, then if there's a block would mean it has to go back to the drawing board. If there are no blocks, then you ask for, are there any problems with this? If there are no problems with this, like somebody can say, well, I don't want to block it, but I think there's a small problem with it. If there are no problems with it, then you can try to get consensus, and that proposal is set, and then people start working on that. All right, I'm not sure if I really, I think the point is it's a better way for everyone to understand that they're cooperating on things together without somebody feeling like, well, I don't want to do that because I didn't vote on it. Everyone has to vote on it for people to do it. Other questions?
What's the personality profile of a person who's good at this particular role of facilitator? Like, are they expert?
Facilitator.
Yeah, obviously not everyone's good at this.
No, not everyone has to be the facilitator. It's not something that everyone has to be. Usually in a group you would only have one facilitator at any one time. And the facilitator is not making any choices. The facilitator is just making sure that the process keeps moving forward.
So if you're picking out a facilitator out of a group of people and you do an interview, how do you know what the personality profile is of a facilitator?
They have to be, like say, a good moderator. They have to be willing to cut a person off when their time is up. Because usually when you're giving a proposal, you only have a certain amount of time.
So assertive.
2 minutes, 5 minutes.
They have to be assertive.
They have to be confident and assertive. They have to know the rules. They have to be willing to stick with the rules and not bend the rules. And definitely, I mean, it's almost like the facilitator has to be like a computer. The facilitator is just like a computer program that makes everyone follow the rules. There are other things that people can be. There's a minute taker, and the minute taker might have a recorder, a voice recorder, digital recorder, and when the meeting is happening, the voice recorder is on. When people take a break, it's off. That's all the person has to do. A long time ago, it used to be writing, typing. It could be still typing. And then there's also a time taker. Somebody else has to use a stopwatch to make sure that people don't go over time. then there would be, once you get up into when you have groups really doing things, you have somebody who's like an accountant, takes care of all the money, has access to the bank account, something like that. So, and then you can change the facilitator. It doesn't have to stay the same person. But a facilitator is a really important job. If you don't have a facilitator, you can't get to consensus. Other questions? Yeah?
So how big of a group or like community does it apply to?
Usually no more than 10 people. The community can actually be really big. The community can be hundreds of people, but not everyone is. It's like you have a board of directors, you could call them, and even corporations have board of directors. But these people aren't people that are making so much necessarily monetary decisions, though. Once you start doing bigger and bigger things, it does include money. But when it's really small, you just need like 5 or 10 people. And then once you make some decisions, you have a larger group of people that are sort of volunteers, that just want to be active, that want to do something to help the community, but don't necessarily want to put as much time into it as it takes to be part of the core group, going to meetings all the time and making decisions. So a group could be just 10 people. And then let's say those 10 people decide they want to do changing bus routes, and usually it wouldn't start with something like that. Usually it would start with something just the people can do themselves, not necessarily something you need to go to the government and try to change, or a business, not necessarily something you have to try to change with the business. So the group is pretty small, but part of the idea is you eventually go out and look for more people to be active in it. Like there are some people that would like to do a march or an event, but don't necessarily want to be involved in planning it. They just want to volunteer when it happens, right? So the core group is quite small, no more than 10 people. Other questions? No? No? Edison? No?
And we are almost.
Yeah, we're almost at
you have
time.
anything to add? To wrap up?
Not really.
Okay.
Well, let's see if I have anything else in here. The history of consensus. I was hoping somebody would ask me what is the history of consensus. There are a few different places that it came from. The Quakers in the United States, they live in Pennsylvania. They're ethnically from the German area, or the Mennonites. They use consensus and have been using consensus for over 200 years when they make decisions. Those are the kind of people. They don't use computers. They don't drive cars. They use horses and carriages, and they grind their own flour and do all kinds of stuff like that. And what's interesting about them is that when they do consensus, it's part of their religion. It's like a religious experience for them. They feel like everyone agreeing on something is moving them closer to God. There are also indigenous groups in the United States, a couple different indigenous groups inside of the United States, and they would use sort of this council that would get together, these elders that would get together and make decisions. And it was sort of, as part of the general community, it was understood that when the elders made these decisions, that everyone else had to follow along. I mean, it's kind of strange. I mean, you kind of think of it as, it's kind of, in that way, it's kind of like democracy, where everyone, all the regular people have to follow. But at least to move anything forward, everyone has to agree. There's also African Bushmen, and also it happened in Europe as well. But I don't know much about this. Maybe you know more about this, Alex. The Hanseatic League.
No.
Northern Europe, Baltic Sea. Anyway, so there are lots of instances of consensus being used in the past, and my experience with consensus, the reason why I wanted to give this speech was because of this group. The Oregon Country Fair. The Oregon Country Fair is a group in Oregon, which makes sense because of the name. And they have a board of directors. It's a party that's put on every summer for 3 days. And they have a board of directors and a president, and all of the decisions that get made at the high level are done through consensus. And I remember when my mom was the president for a couple of years when I was a kid, and I remember going to the board meetings. The board meetings were actually kind of big things. We would have one part of the board meeting one day where you would just have the core group, the 10 people, going through the consensus process of saying the things they want to do. And each person has a different role. Like, what would your favorite thing be? There might be some people, their favorite thing is security, or traffic, or food, or communications. Each person has something they really love to do, something they feel passionate about, and they become like a crew leader. And at the board meeting, decisions are made about those crews, and then you have a larger meeting with all of the volunteers where people talk about the jobs that they need to do after that. Anyway, that's my experience with consensus. And
okay, Ethan, thank you very much. It's time to...
There's a green one and a pink